Hello and welcome to a Tolbert Music tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about the saxophone. Everything that you need to know as a new beginner or the parent of a new beginner on this instrument. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that I've moved to the floor. It's because it's really important to be opening this instrument on the floor. Our youngest beginners will have to do it that way, but some of our older beginners are going to get the idea that they should be opening it up on a chair or that they should be doing it on their lap. It's a recipe for total disaster. You don't want this falling from any height, anywhere, and so it's really important that you make sure that you open it on the floor. All saxophone cases are a little bit different. It's going to be extremely uncommon for you to have one that would zip, but there are zipper cases. Almost all of them are buckle based. With this being kind of a big, heavy instrument, it's a little extra important that we make sure we open it right side up. Usually you can tell that that's the case by having the logo facing upward, or also the rounded part of the buckles is going to be facing upward. I'm going to face it towards you like this. I'm going to face it towards you so that you can see it open correctly. The buckles are really simple. You just flip them. They usually come down on their own. Sometimes you need to coax this part down. Pretty simple and straightforward. And then voila! We can open our saxophone case. Where to begin? The first thing that you're going to want to do is take this plastic off of the mouthpiece and throw it away. It's trash. You don't need it. You can set the mouthpiece safely aside. That's actually going to be one of the very first things that we end up using. The next thing you're going to do is open up this little accessory package that came in your saxophone. And you may throw that plastic away too. The first things that you're going to need out of that accessory package are a reed and this cork grease. The reed I'm going to set here in a safe place to just wait for a moment. This cork grease is one of your most important friends with the saxophone, and you're going to need to make sure that you're using it regularly, something like once a week. The place that you're going to be using it is on the one cork that the saxophone has to worry about, this big cork on the neck joint where we're going to be placing the mouthpiece right here. You want to make sure that this gets greased up quite frequently. It's kind of impossible to use too much grease. It's probably possible, but it's a lot harder to use too much than it is to use too little. If you don't grease this up enough, then you're putting the mouthpiece on here with a dry cork and you're going to end up destroying the cork. It can be pretty expensive. It's not like this is just cheap regular old cork, and it's not like getting it cut to precision to be on here is an easy task either. So it can be something of an expensive repair to destroy your cork. When you're fresh taking it out of the case, you've got to make sure that you use cork grease. It's okay to just go ahead and liberally spread this stuff on there the whole way around. And then you can cap your cork grease and put it back in your handy little accessory area of your case while we get the next part set up. I do like to make sure that the mouthpiece is set up before I set up the reed. I'm going to start with this. Some people might respectfully disagree with me on that, but I like to get this here onto the neck first. This part right here, this silver part, is called the ligature. I'm going to set that aside and talk a little bit more about that when we're putting the reed on. But for now, we're going to get this mouthpiece onto here. It's pretty obvious how it's going to fit. You're going to thread it on, and you're going to gently but firmly, without pressing too hard, twisting and pushing them together. I want to caution you about this big key right here. This big key that arcs around the neck of the saxophone is one of the reasons why people will want you to set your reed first. It's easy to clamp down too hard and to bend that key. So just be careful. It's really best to be over the top of it like this, and then to be gently pushing together like this, really mostly using the action on this plastic mouthpiece and not trying to twist from this end over here. The more you twist over here, the more likely you are to damage that. Okay? It depends on the saxophone, but we want to get this it depends on the saxophone, but we want to get this mounted well up the cork. On this particular saxophone, it's only getting about this far before I have to put down some serious pressure to push it further up the neck of the saxophone. That's okay. We're going to stop where it's like hand tight, if that makes sense. A lot of students will just barely get it on there. You can see that I covered based on how much I pushed the cork grease up. You can see that I got it on there a pretty good ways. A lot of students are just barely getting it on there, and this could potentially make issues with creating your first sounds. So you may need to help your student get it pushed on a little bit farther. All right, let's talk about setting a reed. Okay, your saxophone reed comes in a plastic case like this. All right, this is the one that came in the accessory kit of the saxophone that I just opened. You are likely to get one reed in that as well. I will have instructed you to get a separate box of reeds that you're going to need. You're going to go through a lot of these at the beginning. They're going to get busted up and chipped, and I'm sorry about that, but it's just the way that it goes with this instrument, and it's part of the learning curve. It's okay, and you need to continually replace these throughout having a saxophone. We'll go through the whole thing now. Let's start with just getting it set on your instrument so that we can get playing and making our first couple of sounds. This plastic case is really important. It's not trash. You're going to want to set it aside somewhere careful. The reed itself needs to be made wet in order to vibrate correctly to play. So you're going to gently play it in your mouth like this. It doesn't need to get super soaked or anything, especially for the very beginning here. Okay, we got the reed very, very, very gently made wet. And now we're going to set it on the mouthpiece. It's a pretty straightforward affair here. The reed has a rounded side that wouldn't set nicely anywhere. And the same thing with the mouthpiece. It's rounded all over and it has one flat spot. Lo and behold, that lines up with the flat spot of the reed. Now, once I get it on there, I like to hold with the thumb at the base like this. This is part of why I like to have the neck on there as well, because it gives me a little bit more to hold on to. I've got something to work with, and I'm a lot less likely to drop or mishandle the whole thing. So I'm anchoring it in place with my thumb, and the way that you get it aligned correctly is you're going to use your thumb and forefinger on either side of the reed like this to adjust it gently. And when it's all in place just right, if you look at it dead on, like you're looking at it right now, you'll see a tiny sliver of black at the top. You see the mouthpiece. It's adjusted so that it's about the exact same height as the mouthpiece with having a teensy tiny little window left over. Don't stress about it at the very beginning. If it's not in the perfect position, you're gonna make sounds, and your student will get better and better doing this with a lot of practice. So don't be too overly worried about exact position. Now we have to put the ligature, this silver piece, on to get it to stay in the correct place. You're going to notice that this ligature, the screws are tightened all the way, and that is normal, and that is a problem because when I put it on, it's going to not go down far enough. Let me also take a brief moment to help you notice that the ligature is tapered. Okay, it's actually tapered at the same angle. It's actually tapered at the same angle as the back of the mouthpiece here, like this. So one of the two holes, it may not appear so at first, but one of the two holes is smaller than the other. It's the one that's on top in this particular, and you can see that that helps us read the words right side up. Okay, so before I go any further, I'm actually going to have to set the rest of it down and back the screws out of this one. You can see that it's way over tightened. I have to back them out quite a long ways here in order to be in the right spot. I like to get it to where there's just a teensy bit of the screw showing out this end right here. Let me also go ahead and take 2 seconds to mention if one of these screws comes all the way out, it's not broken, it's okay. It just has to go back in. Only one side is threaded. Only this side over here is threaded, so it has to go in the unthreaded side first, and then that way you can actually clamp it shut. If you end up with a problem, just bring it to me in school, and fortunately this one is a 5-second fix that I can do for you. Okay, but now the ligature is set up so that it's actually going to be able to go around that reed properly. So let me quickly reset the reed like I showed you before. Still anchoring with my thumb, and I'm just going to drop the ligature over the top like this. Now, I'm going to slowly move my fingers kind of out of the way and keep bringing the ligature down, keep bringing it down, keep bringing it down, and I have to get past this ridge of the mouthpiece. Okay, in this case, I have to loosen my screws even more. The screws are too tight and I can't get it down low enough. It's really important that it gets past this ridge of the mouthpiece right here. If it's not past that, what's going to happen is it's too high and it's kind of choking on the reed. Okay, once I get it that low, I hand tighten the screws. Be careful that when you're hand tightening the screws, it's not just shooting the ligature back up. Sometimes it does that. Sometimes it's just moving it back up. And you don't need this to be death grip tight or anything like that. You just need it hand tight so that the reed isn't going to go flying off while we're trying to play. Okay? And now you got this part of your saxophone assembled. It's pretty important, I would say, to go ahead and set this down really, really gently, somewhere that it's going to be safe for the moment, okay? I'm being really careful to not put the reed in a place where it's going to smash on anything. I'm not putting it where the reed's on the floor because that's kind of nasty, but I'm just letting it rest here really, really gently while I worry about the rest. Now, the next thing that you're going to have to grab out of here is this neck strap. Now, this neck strap is very, very, very unpleasant, and there's nothing I could recommend more as an upgrade for your student than a new neck strap than the one that comes out of the case. They do unfortunately just give you one of the cheap ones. I don't know why. They ought to just charge a little bit more for the thing and put a nice neck strap in, but this has to go around your neck and hold the weight of the saxophone, and there's no real padding there or anything. I find it to be extremely uncomfortable. So pretty straightforward here. The hole on the top goes over your head like this, okay? And the rest of the apparatus is kind of hanging down here like this. All right. This piece right here is adjustable so that the saxophone can be raised and lowered. I'm going to show you more about that when the saxophone is actually attached. In order to adjust it, you usually have to hold the back side here and then move this up and down. That's the easiest way to adjust it. I see kids just wrenching on this thing in both directions and it gets all tangled up and tied and whatnot. It's a really good idea to actually just practice helping them adjust this without touching the saxophone. This is an important one to practice. This would be a big deal if you can help me have them practice this at home, because having them do this in class is a real bummer. They show up with their saxophone, they want to play with their friends, and they can't set it up right until they can adjust this a little bit, and so then I have to make them practice this. This is one of the reasons that I'm inspired to make these videos, because if we can get this done at home, then we can do the saxophone in school when they have me. Okay, you've got your neck strap on, you've got your mouthpiece and neck all set up and ready. The next step is to come over and stand up the saxophone like this. I like to just go ahead and stand it up in the case like this. I think that this is the safest way to do it. If you start grabbing the saxophone and pulling it out, it's just too easy to grab onto the wrong keys. You got to get a grip on something, and then you're pulling them in the wrong direction and you're going to twist them and whatnot. Very, 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 very bad idea. You don't want to go slinging this thing around like a gunslinger. That's total craziness. You're asking for a real big problem. Most of them have this plastic cap that goes in here just to help protect the integrity of that. Okay, so you've got your saxophone standing up. On the back side of the saxophone, there's a ring right here. I'm going to go against my own recommendation here and hold it up nice and close for you to see. There's a ring right there, and that is where the clip on my neck strap goes. What I like to do, once again, is just stand it up and clip it right here. I haven't even taken it up out of the case at that point. I did to show you on the camera, but now it's set, and look, my neck holds the saxophone. My neck holds the saxophone. I don't need my hands to hold it all the time. My neck is fundamentally what holds it, okay? Now that I have it this far, it's time to pick up that neck and mouthpiece and get them into the place where they obviously go. Be careful. There is this little rod sticking up. and this key on the neck joint goes over the top of that, like this. Like this. That is the correct setup. There's a set screw here that you use to tighten it down. It should not be flopping back and forth, okay, unless you put a lot of pressure on it. It should not be flopping back and forth at all, and this set screw is the one that tightens it. On this saxophone, I have another screw over here. That helps hold in a marching stand. You can use like a little stand for music that goes in here and pops up in front of your face over here to hold music while you're marching around. You're pretty much never going to end up using that screw. You end up memorizing all your marching music anyways. And then this right here is the one to tighten it. Might be a little tough to tell, but it'll be pretty obvious based on whether you're getting the neck tightened down or not. Okay, we are super close to making sounds. The last thing is to get the neck strap adjusted so that the saxophone is at the right height. You're going to notice right now that the saxophone is lined up to go into the bottom of my neck. It's going to stab me in the throat. That's the wrong orientation. When I'm sitting up with my head straight and my posture correct, which is like, you know, just regular old good posture, when I'm lined up like this, the saxophone should be lined up to go in my mouth. So this is way too low. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the saxophone up on my knee like this, and that's going to make it way easier to adjust this neck strap. In fact, it might be a good idea to go ahead and lay the saxophone across both of your knees so that you can use two hands on this. Remember, if you've practiced adjusting it, then what you're going to do is hold on behind the clip. There's two straps that are behind the clip, and now you can just kind of yank it up slowly, 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 one by one by one. Let's try that out. Oh, it's so close. It's coming in a little bit under my mouth. I'm going to have to lower my head, hunch my shoulders in order to get to the saxophone. I'm kind of fine-tuning it at this point, and a lot of our students are going to we're going to make some small sacrifices along those lines at the very beginning. But this one right now needs to get hiked up just a little bit more. Aha, and it goes straight into my mouth. All I have to do is turn the saxophone towards me, and it's lined up to go with my mouth. Don't worry about exactly where your hands go. I'm holding it properly right now, but don't worry about it. You could be holding it like this, and it still is going to end up lined up with your mouth, okay? And it very naturally is going to end up tilting off to the left side, like this. It goes off to my left, and that's like the normal rest position. Rest position is like this. It's kind of resting a little bit in my lap, but mostly on my neck as well. I kind of like use this leg to get under the bell and give myself a rest if my neck is getting tired. I already mentioned to you before, a better neck strap is going to make it so that you need a lot less rest as far as that is concerned, and I will link you to a nice one in the description. They're not crazy expensive, and they're indefinite investments if you take good care of them. So, okay, let's talk about basic sound production on this instrument. In order to make basic sounds, you're going to find that this is actually one of the easiest instruments to do it on. Kids come up and they make decent sounds on the saxophone. It's part of why I have so many saxophonists in all my groups, because first sounds just tend to be easier. It goes in your mouth and you blow, and sound comes out. It's not, there's no real rocket science involved. Let me show you in quite a bit more detail the correct way to form what we call our embouchure. Embouchure is how you form, it's a French word for how you form your face to play the instrument. On saxophone, we're using a single lip embouchure. We're going to cover our bottom teeth with our lip like this. Like, oh, you're Granny, who needs dentures? Okay, the most common error with that is this. Getting your lip too far up in your mouth, and you'll see it happen when they put the mouthpiece in to go. They drag their lip in with them, and then it's going to be hard to make sound. Okay, but you cover your teeth, the mouthpiece goes in on top of that. Notice that some of the reed is past my lip. It's in my mouth, past my lip, not resting on my lip like this, past my lip, like into my mouth, like this. Teeth go on top, mouth closes, blow air. Teeth, lips. If air is coming out the side, Then you just got to close your lips tighter so that you're not putting, you're not losing any of the air. All the air goes into the saxophone like that. If you have the instrument not far enough, no sound will come out. If you're biting down really hard, no sound will come out. You don't bite down with your jaw stays relaxed. If you have it too far into your mouth, it'll and it'll be pretty obvious when you're starting to get those sounds. But you know what? We take those sounds at the beginning too. We're not worried about the quality of the sounds. It's really just getting things set up and getting any sound out at the very beginning. And that's how it's done. You form your embouchure. You've already got the setup nice. And I'm not worried about students being in the perfect hand position at the beginning. I actually don't mind. It is left hand on top, right hand on bottom. And for the right hand, there's this beautiful thumb hook, this black thumb hook on the back of the instrument right here. There's this beautiful black thumb hook on the back of the instrument right here that your right thumb goes underneath, and that really helps you stabilize. Once you have that, it's pretty obvious where your left hand goes somewhere, and you'll see a lot of kids, they like to grab around the neck. Honestly, it's fine. That's totally fine at the beginning. It's fine if they're doing this to make the sound. I'm not worried about that. I want sound more than I care about their hands being in the correct position. Okay? But now, let's talk about proper hand position. Okay? I already showed you this thumb hook on the back, and that is where the right thumb goes. And that is going to rest off to the side of the body like this. Off to the side. You technically can do it in the center like this as well. This is also allowed. This is legal playing position to be here. But our kids are small, and it's going to make a lot more sense for them to hold it off to the side. Okay? If they try to put it in the middle, it gets really cumbersome, and their teeny tiny legs conflict with it, you know. I've got long arms and a very long torso. If they have the saxophone in the middle, then they're reaching like down here, you know, between their ankles to try and play the notes. It just doesn't make any sense. So for our young kids, I actually do think there's a correct decision, and it's off to the side like this. I'll try to be diligent about playing that way. Once you have it off to the side, notice I'm rotating the mouthpiece so it goes straight into my mouth. I don't want to have to rotate my head over like this to be able to play with the saxophone on the side. Okay? You want to be straight up and down. All right? Okay. So we've got the right thumb back here. Let's actually move to the left hand now. The left thumb goes on this black dot on the back of the saxophone. Pretty straightforward. That's where it hangs out. It's going to use this button a lot. It hangs out on the dot as its generic spot. And when we say thumb on the saxophone, we mean this. The right thumb doesn't have any keys to touch. The right thumb is just holding the instrument in place. It's just helping stabilize things. So when we say thumb, we mean left thumb, and we mean this one key that the left thumb ever engages with. It doesn't do anything else. Okay? As I rotate around the saxophone, you're going to notice these three keys. We call them the palm keys because your palm is what lines up with them, and you want to not touch them. You have a nice big round hand shape that goes around those keys, and you line up the first finger with this button right here. I've grabbed this other saxophone because I want to show you something. The buttons on this saxophone are ever so slightly different from the buttons on this saxophone. Okay. On this saxophone, the top button is a silver key. It has this silver finish on it. And then the first left finger would go there. On this saxophone, the top button is finished with this plastic pretty overlay, not this flat finish. This button is this button. And so you have to determine on your saxophone whether you have one that's designed like this or one that's designed like this. I really wish they were all designed like this because it makes it a lot more obvious where your left finger goes. It goes right there. But on this style of saxophone over here, your left finger is going to go there. A little annoying, but that's the right spot for it. Okay. no matter which style of saxophone you're using, you do have to now skip a key. You skip this little bitty one in here. So you have your thumb on that black dot on the back, almost exactly opposite of that around the saxophone is this key here. You skip one, and then your third finger goes there. So we call that thumb 1, 2, 3. Thumb 1, 2, 3. And on this style saxophone, again, thumb 1. Whoops, I have to skip that one. Thumb 1, 2, 3. Thumb 1, 2, 3. All right. They're ever so slightly different. It doesn't make one better or worse than the other. The finish on the buttons is one of the least important things to be worried about in terms of the quality of the saxophone. So don't fret one way or the other, but just know that not all saxophones look exactly like mine, and you might get misled by that top button when you're getting your left hand position. I'm going to review it one last time. Thumb, focus on my fingers. Thumb, 1, 2, 3. Okay, the right hand is pretty straightforward. There are 3 finished buttons down here, and I've never encountered a saxophone that wasn't designed like that. And your 3 fingers line up here, your pinky lines up with these 2 keys over here like this, but you're not going to be worried about those, right? We're not going to be pushing them for quite a while. That's it. We name the positions of these fingers, thumb 1, 2, 3, and I like to label these 4, 5, 6. If you label them 1, 2, 3 again, it's just a way to get confused. So when I say 4, I'm talking about the right index finger on saxophone. The kids will learn this as I go back over it. I'll be putting their fingers like thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and running through them really quickly as best I can. But the more you can practice this at home, the better. The drill is thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I picked up my saxophone and I'm ready to play, and I don't need to do the whole shimmy through all of the different keys. I don't even have to look at the keys. At the beginning, the students are going to go, and that's fine. That's part of the learning process. It's exactly what we expect them to have to do. But eventually, they're not even going to look at their hands. They're just going to turn the saxophone and be ready to play. They're just going to be ready to play. So that takes time and practice. And if you can get that part at home, it makes a really big difference for them to know the proper hand position when they come into class. And I don't have to make them practice that 100 times. We can start playing. Now, the very first notes that we play on the saxophone are extremely easy notes. The first note is 1 and 2. You're not touching the thumb key, so your thumb is just resting on that black dot. And instead, we're playing 1 and 2. That's what the saxophones call A, and what as a group we call concert C. A. To play the next note, you pick up one finger. It's finger number 1. Finger number 1 only. Notice that I'm actually going to leave my fingers really close to the saxophone. These are just resting very calmly on the buttons that they're assigned to. And when I pick up 2, I don't go like this. I go like this. Pick it up, and I basically leave it there. Those are the first 2 notes, A and B, or concert C and concert D. And then no fingers at all. No fingers at all. I'm not pushing down any buttons. My thumb is still resting in the hook. This thumb is still resting on its dot, but I'm not pushing down any buttons at all. Saxophone C sharp or concert E. I'm going through the names fast because we're not actually super duper worried about that. We'll work with the students in class on what the names of them are and start assigning them how to actually read those notes in the book and everything. But at the beginning, we teach it all by rote anyways. It's put these fingers down, this plays, and I'll probably be teaching it as do, re, mi anyways, because then I can kind of universalize it for everybody, and we'll worry about the actual nomenclature later. That's a much later skill that we need to add in. So your first 3 notes. Really easy on the saxophone. The hard part with the saxophone is holding onto it. Getting the hands in the right spot is just a little cumbersome and awkward. It's heavy. The neck strap is really hard. But the good news is that fundamentally putting the instrument together and making the most basic sounds on it are actually really, really quite easy. So once you get a little bit more comfortable with actually just holding on to the thing, you've got a nice smooth set of sailing for a long time there. It's not like there's not challenges that will come up, but that gets you past the first most difficult hurdles on the saxophone. So we're not quite done yet. We want to talk a little bit about longer term maintenance, disassembling the instrument and then longer term maintenance with it as well. So when it's time to take the instrument apart, the first thing you want to do is protect your reed. Get your reed case back out, get this guy off and get it back into the reed case. Let me show you how to do that. We're going to quickly, easily unscrew the ligature. Now that I have the ligature at the right size to be on this mouthpiece, I only need to back the screws out just a little bit, and I like to leave it that way. I don't screw them back in or anything because now I know that when it goes on, it should be loose fitting in the correct place. I'm only gonna have to tighten it a little bit. That way I'm never messing around too much with the ligature. See, I'm still anchoring the reed. I'm being really careful because if this falls, it's dead. There's no way it's gonna survive. They're so thin. They're so fragile. They're so thin, they're so fragile. There's just no way that it's going to survive that. So I'm being really careful about that. And then I'm taking and I'm getting it back into this reed case. This reed case is designed with a special opening on this end for the reed to go in. It is open on the other end, but it's fairly obvious that that's not the right spot. It's just a little too thin. And this one is much more inviting. That's the end that it goes in. And you're actually going to insert the tip of the reed first, like this. It goes in and you want to lay it down nice and flat on the bottom. And then there's some plastic spring rods right here that as you push the reed in will engage and put a little bit of pressure down so that it kind of holds it into place. All right, and then it's open and vented so that the reed is going to be able to dry out. We don't want the moisture from our breath and mouth to stay on this and cause it to grow mold. So it's really important that you have the reed case. It's really important that you get the reed back in here every time. I see students take out their mouthpiece. It still has the reed on it from last time. Oh boy, it's been festering in that case. It gets real yucky real quick. So please make sure that you get your students taking their reeds off of the mouthpiece as well, and into their proper case. There are other case designs. One of the more common types of reeds, one of the nice, like, professionals play on a brand called Van Doren. They're a little bit more expensive. They're not necessary for your students at this time, but if you get them the really nice Van Doren reeds, they're going to slot in from the side like this. There's like an opening on the side. It's the same basic idea. Be careful as you get it in there, and then they vent out really nicely. Okay, all the there's really no major superiority or inferiority of the cases. Just make sure that you do in fact get it back into the case. Okay, let's take a quick moment to talk a little bit further about reed management. Reeds, you're going to go through 9 million of these things at the beginning. I'm sorry to tell you, but the kids are going to break them. They're going to be putting the ligature on and just poking the thing right in half. It's going to happen. That's why we want you to get a nice big box of them, and I would recommend going ahead and getting a second box because they're probably going to dip into that before the end of the first year. Once they get settled, after a couple months of like using reeds, they're going to stop breaking them, and what's going to happen is they're going to wear out on their own, and when they wear out on their own, it's a lot harder to tell because they're not chipped, they're not damaged, there's nothing wrong visibly with them, yet it's time for them to go. The way that you know that it's time for them to go is that they've been around for about 1 month. So I like to make sure that my reed students keep a Sharpie in their case and they write the date. Today is 8/26 on their reed case like this. And now they know that reed 8/26, that's when it came out. That's when it got its first play. And so about a month from now, when they're feeling like my reed is a little funky, they can check the case and go, oh yeah, well, it's about a month old and it's time to replace it. In an ideal world, what I think is the proper way to manage reeds is to have 2 reeds going at one given point in time. So in about 2 weeks from now, which would be on September the 9th, so I would end up with a 9/9 reed if I obey the 2-week mark. I open up a second reed, and now I have a reed for 9/9. And every time I practice, I just switch back and forth between them. I use 9-9, I use 8-26, I use 9-9, I use 8-26. And about 2 weeks after I've opened 9-9 on, well, let's see, what will that be? That'll be 9-23. I will throw out 8-26, and then I'll have, this one will become my old read, this will become my new read. And I'm back and forth between them. It's really the only way to develop a feel of which reads are good, which reads are bad, which reads are old, which reads are new. When you get to a pro level, you're going to have an entire case full of reads, and they'll be saying, this one's for when it's hot, this is for when it's cold, this one's for when it's dry, this one's for when it's stormy, this one's for when it's late, this one's for when I'm feeling sad, this one's for when it's kind of ridiculous. The reed players that I know, they have just a huge collection of them, and they use them for all kinds of different purposes, and they care, and it matters which reed they're using. I'm being tongue-in-cheek and silly about it, but it really does matter which reed you're using. And so if we don't get our students into a cycle of using these things and getting to tell the difference between good ones and bad ones, then we're not doing them right as teachers. And so that's what the cycle for reeds should ultimately look like, in my opinion. Early on, don't sweat it. The kids aren't going to be able to keep up with all of that. I have some students who've been taking private lessons for years that it's a struggle to get them to keep on top of the reeds in this way. But if we can get parent help on it, that's one that we probably need parent help on, is probably a better way to say it. Okay, so for the rest of disassembly, really straightforward. All you gotta do is take off this mouthpiece. If you bought the care kit that comes with it, it has a brush that you can run up into this thing and just brush it out. It's a really good idea to have that and to use it every once in a while. You don't need to use it every single time, but if you don't, from time to time, gunk is going to build up in this and they can get real nasty. So you want to make sure that from time to time you do scrub out your mouthpiece. That's why we ask you to buy the care kit. The ligature, again, is just going to go back on here. Why store it anywhere else? And there's usually a cap that is cut to fit over the mouthpiece like this. Okay? And then there's a special spot in the case. It's really obvious. I'm not even going to bother showing it where that goes. We take off the neck. It's really obvious where this guy goes in the case. Now, I'm going to go back down to the floor. Just like I did before. I am going to set my saxophone down before I unstrap it so that I can just gently get it back into its place. Take off my neck strap and get this back in the case. Okay, so then there's one final step that I have to show you, and it has to do with swabbing out the saxophone. You got to unwind this thing that came in the kit when you opened it, and you're going to stand the saxophone back up. You're going to drop on one end of the string. There's this weight. You're going to drop it down the bell of the saxophone, and you're going to feed the rest of this string into the bell of the saxophone. And you can even use your finger to just very gently get it started. And you're going to tilt the saxophone like this, and you're going to tilt here, and you can give it a little shake if you need, and it's cut to a length where this will come through the end. You pull, you pull, you pull, you pull. It gets a little tighter as you get to the end. You pull, pull, and get this out the end. What that does is it collects all the extra moisture that's in the saxophone so that it doesn't sit there with this closed case, closed dark place for mold to form. You want to swab it out every single time. Brushing out the mouthpiece, you can get away with doing that, every couple times, once a week or something like that. But swabbing out the saxophone, you want to make sure that you do that every time because you collect a lot of moisture in there, especially down here at the bottom. Gravity just brings a lot down into there, and so you want to make sure that you get it out of the saxophone. And there we have it. Okay, and long-term maintenance on the saxophone is really no big deal. Anything that it needs that's major, you're going to have to take it into the store anyways to have them do it. if you take care of the saxophone the way that I've showed you, it's going to last a really long time. There's one other intermediary step that we can do with pad paper that I'm just not worried about showing you about at this particular moment in time. You're not going to need to do that for a really long time. Your beginners will be fine for quite some time, and we'll talk about that later when they are a lot more comfortable with holding and handling the saxophone in general, and I'll show them how to use the pad paper from time to time when it becomes appropriate. So with that, that concludes the video for today. Thank you so much for hanging out for the whole thing. Please don't hesitate if you have any additional questions or if you have any feedback about things that we should have included in this video. Thanks again, and we will see you in class.